Good morning, everybody. Welcome to councillors joining us in the chamber and those online, as well as members of the public who are watching. I would like to advise elected members that there will be rest breaks and a 1 hour lunch break if required during the meeting. I would also like to take this opportunity to remind all members to please ensure all devices are on silent mode or switched off, and if everyone could please check their devices now, I would be very grateful. I will ask Scott Hendry to confirm apologies and take a roll call.
Thank you, Provost. Good morning, members. We have apologies from Bailey Brock and Councillor Forbes, unless there are any other apologies to be submitted. In terms of those members online, if they could just confirm that they're in attendance. I believe we have Councillor Chan.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor James.
Good morning, present.
Thanks. Councillor Reid.
Present.
Councillor Reid.
Present.
Thank you. And Councillor Robertson.
Present.
I believe that's all members who are online, and I think all other members are present in the chamber, Provost.
Thank you. Item 2 is declarations of interest. Do members have any declarations of interest in respect of the Councillors' Code of Conduct in any of the items of today's business? I'm not seeing any declarations of interest. Therefore, we'll move on to item 3.1, which is to ask if members are happy to agree the minute of the predetermination committee of the 17th of August 2022. Are members happy to agree?
Agreed.
Thank you. Item 3.2 is the minute of the council meeting of the 17th of August 2022. Are members happy to agree that meeting minute?
Agreed.
Thank you. Item 3.3 is the special council meeting minute of the 12th of September 2022. Are members happy to agree the minute?
Agreed.
Thank you. Item 4 is the outstanding business statement. Do members have any questions on the outstanding business statement? I'm seeing no questions. Therefore, I'm councillors happy to note the outstanding business statement. Thank you. And item 5, I will be handing over to Deputy Provost to take items 5 and 6. So, Deputy Provost.
Good morning. Thank you, Provost. We now move then to item 5, the Perth and Kinross Council Annual Performance Report 21-22, and I would ask Charlene Gills to introduce this report. Please place questions in the chat as normal. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Provost, and good morning, everyone. We are presenting our 2021-22 Corporate Annual Performance Report this morning for approval. The report starts with a high-level summary and presents our highlights and challenges and how we tackle them. Then each section provides some narrative around each objective. The relevant key performance indicators are used to measure progress against our objectives and are listed and links to the Council's online performance dashboard, which is in keeping with our approach in previous years. We also need to note that when viewing the data, direct comparisons of data pre and post-COVID should be treated with caution and may not be appropriate. The report highlights some of the positive achievements that we have made against our outcomes and is balanced by recognising some of the improvement areas for the organisation moving forward. The APR has also been presented at the Scrutiny and Performance Committee last week on the 21st of September for scrutiny and comment. A number of areas were raised and these have now been addressed and will be picked up in briefings to elected members. A general comment was also made about the presentation of information in future, incorporating more feedback from users, communities and statistics to gauge success and impact. This will be picked up as part of our performance review and rollout of the new performance management software. The accessibility of the report has been increased this year, and however the format is the same, with the focus on our 5 strategic objectives and an Organised to Deliver section giving information on how our support services continue to provide best values. We are pleased to present this report and welcome feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlene. I'm not sure my chat is working, so if people can indicate questions to me by hand, that would be useful until my chat can be restored. I'm not sure what's happening. Are there any questions? Nope. Okay. If there are no questions, Councillor Peter Barrett.
Thanks, Andrew. I had a couple of questions. The first one is with regard to recycling rates and achieving 70% of recycling by 2025, which is stated on page 31 of the report, page 71 of the pack. This requires a kind of 10 percentage point increase each year for the next 2 years. And I appreciate that the twin stream recycling service is to be rolled out, but is that actually capable of raising collection and diversion rates by the necessary amount? The PKC dashboard shows a pretty static picture.
Thank you for that question. Charlene, can you take that? Barbara Renton has indicated she'll reply.
Thank you, Provost. We recognise that that is a challenging target, but it's the target that we need to try and reach in terms of both Scottish Government targets, but also in terms of climate change as well. Twin stream will help, but a big part of that is the ongoing approach that we need to make in relation to education, which we do in a variety of ways, but also and in particular at recycling centres where we have people who will chat to customers to ensure that they are recycling effectively. Obviously, we've had an approach with the red tagging, which has proved unpopular in some ways, but also proved very effective in terms of improving the recycling that we're doing as well. So we are hopeful that we will get there, but as I say, it is a challenge.
Thank you. I now have a question from Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. I'm going to be local here, but it had been quite a major issue earlier this year, and that's the question of antisocial behaviour in Crieff. It's set out on page 74 as a case study, but can I ask for an up-to-date position on that, and just what progress officers believe has been made on that front? Thank you.
Thank you. Charlene, can you take that one?
In terms of the case study sorry, Councillor Donaldson, I didn't hear what page you said that was on.
Page 74 of the annual performance report.
Let me just double check.
Page 34 of the 74 of the council papers, 34 of the annual the performance report. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let me just double check, and then I think this is one that may need to go to one of our operational colleagues on the call. So antisocial behaviour, I'm just wondering if there is someone...
Charlene, I think Claire Mailer is suggesting that she can reply.
You.
Claire.
Thank you, Councillor Parrott. I'm not sure if I'll be able to give you a full answer to the question. I think, as Charlene has indicated, we'll get more detail back, but I certainly know that there has been some good progress in terms of the multi-agency working, and I think good liaison with communities and areas where there have been concerns in the past. We don't have any up-to-date information, or I don't have any up-to-date information. And I'm not sure if there's anybody on the call. I see that Jackie's coming in, perhaps with an answer. But if not, what we can do is we can provide more detailed information following council today.
Thank you, Claire. Jackie, would you wish to contribute?
Yeah, I can provide some supplementary information if that's helpful. Just to say that this was a multi-agency approach, as the case study sets out, very much involving a wide range of partners, including Police Scotland and youth services, and the fact that that people are struggling to give you an update will mean that that this has been successful and that we're not hearing continuing escalation of concerns around antisocial behaviour through our risk management processes, which I receive on a weekly basis. So I would suggest that this has been particularly successful, but following this meeting we can provide an absolutely up-to-date position following this council meeting. Thank you.
Nothing further really, just thank you, and yes, I would welcome, as would the other ward councillors, just more information so we can provide some reassurance to the local community, but grateful.
Thank you. Councillor Peter Barrett, do you have a second question?
I do, Vice Convener. It's with regard to the performance highlights on page 42 of the pack, page 2 of the report under educated, responsible and informed citizens. The first bullet is that 82% of children starting P1 are meeting all expected development milestones, which I believe is good news. But I did wonder, how did that compare with national performance?
Thank you for that question. I think Barbara Renton will take this one on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And apologies from Sheena Devlin, who hasn't been able to attend. The development milestones data reported is from a Perth and Kinross system that was developed around 2016, so we cannot compare that properly against national data. However, since the collection of data started in 2016, there's been a 3% increase in children meeting all developmental milestones.
Okay, thanks very much for that. And I appreciate that the performance is improving, but I just wondered, relatively, if every other authority was at 95%, then our performance wouldn't be very good. Whereas if everybody else was substantially below that, then clearly we would be, one of the best performing authorities in Scotland. So I think some context on that would be useful.
Pass that on to the Executive Director, Councillor Barrett.
Thank you. I'm sure we will be able to provide that in due course. Thank you. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. My question is in relation to, I think it's page 4 of the actual report. I'm not sure what page number it is on the bigger pack, but it talks about the target for new affordable homes. As we all know, affordable housing is quite a topical issue at the moment, and it says we've exceeded our target of 150. I just wondered what our actual performance was, just to give us an idea of that, if that's possible. Thank you.
Again, I'll ask if Barbara Renton can address that point. Thank you.
Okay, and if you could bear with me just a split second while I look for that information. Councillor Duff. Yeah. So what we have over the last year, sort of for 2021-22, then there were 308 affordable homes, of which 257 were social rent, both between ourselves and social housing. 30 were buyback properties and 51 were mid-market rentals. Our target was 150 affordable homes, so we exceeded the target by 158. And what we will be bringing to the next Housing and Social Wellbeing Committee is the SHIP, which is our Strategic Housing Investment Plan, and which will be based on our housing needs demand analysis. So we will then be able to look at that, but we are suggesting within that we probably increase our target from the 150 to 210.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you. I see no further questions. And therefore, I'll go to Councillor Lang to move the report.
Thanks, Deputy Provost. Provost, Baileys and fellow councillors, I'm happy to move the Council's annual performance report for 2021-22, setting out the work which has been undertaken by officers with and on behalf of councillors, partners and residents over the past year. It has continued to be a challenging time as services have responded to the ongoing aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic and settled into new ways of working and changes to demands and expectations of our communities after 2 years of disruption. Once again, council teams have continued to work together with our community planning partners and others to deliver essential services with and within our communities. Much of that work takes place behind the scenes, activity that our residents do not witness, but without which they would quickly feel the impact of its loss. The size and scope of the work undertaken by our services across Perth and Kinross is significant, and neither this report nor I, in moving this paper, can hope to do justice to it all. I'm glad that it appeared before the Scrutiny Committee, who spent time going through it and came up with useful suggestions that are going to be taken forward when this paper comes to Council next. I would also like to take the opportunity to highlight a few specific areas as an indication of some of the achievements of this past year. As was pointed out earlier, this is from 2021 to 22, so I'm pleased to commend some of the decisions taken by the previous administration along with the council, so I'll give them due respect. So to mitigate child poverty, 5.3 million of additional financial support was gained for struggling families through advice from our welfare rights team. Money they were entitled to, but weren't accessing until they were given this help. It's a fantastic amount of money that was there available for our residents, and the welfare rights team are quite rightly one of the gold stars within our organisation. After a significant increase in the local unemployment rate during the height of pandemic, it's pleasing to see that the percentage of working age unemployed has reduced from 4.6% to 2.7% and is once again lower than the national figure for Scotland. Our teams continue to support people into employment through a range of initiatives. Whilst these figures are exceptionally good, we have to continue as a council and this administration, with help of others, to raise the job value within Perth and Kinross. We cannot continue to be a lower wage economy, and that will help if we can keep the employment figures at the same rate as they are or even less, but in higher paid jobs. It will be a success for us all. The sector leading Home First model to offer homeless people a route straight into settled accommodation continues to prove successful, furthering reducing the rate of homelessness by 5% in the reporting year. To Councillor Duff's point, more than 150 new affordable homes were built in Perth and Kinross, and the amount of household waste recycled or composted increased to 50%. It shows the way that cross-party working and attention to these things can be useful, with Councillor Duff raising the important need for more affordable housing, and Councillor Barrett reducing how we have to keep improving our waste recycling. Alongside the contents of the report itself, more detail on the Council's performance and key areas can be found on the PK performance pages of our website. This sets out how key areas are performing compared against targets, trends and comparator councils, and also provides detail on improvement activity to address those areas not doing as well. I'm happy to move this report.
Thank you very much. Can I call on Councillor Drysdale to second the report?
Thank you, Deputy Provost. I'll be brief. This annual performance report is effectively a balanced report card on the final year of the previous administration, combined with a look forward to some of the challenges ahead of us all. As has already been pointed out, the report has been carefully scrutinised by the new Scrutiny and Performance Committee, and now all elected members have also had the opportunity to review and question its content. Answers to these questions have either already been provided today or will be provided to all elected members shortly. Provost, therefore, I am very happy to second this report.
Thank you. Councillor Peter Barrett, comment.
Yeah, it's on now. Thanks very much. Thank you, Deputy Provost. This is, as has been said, a substantial report which illustrates the breadth and scale of this council's actions, investments and interventions across communities throughout our council area and the difference that they have made. It serves once again to re-emphasise the importance of significant investment in key infrastructure projects, including the Cross-Tay Link Road, which is the biggest infrastructure project the Council has ever undertaken to support our local economy, encourage growth and generate prosperity. Like Councillor Grant-Laying, I'm particularly pleased with the Council's ongoing sector-leading performance with regard to rapid rehousing, where we continue to lead the way in Scotland with the shortest stays in temporary accommodation for people made homeless. And that's the product of 15 years of concerted transformation, iterative service and iterative service redesign. It is a testament to the dedication of our housing and homeless services that those achievements were delivered without any Scottish Government Homelessness Pathfinder Authority funding. There is a golden thread running through the report which links the corporate plan priorities for a fairer Perth and Kinross, delivering a just transition to net zero, to the local action improvement plan strategic priorities to tackle inequalities. From poverty, child poverty to mental health and well-being, that thread weaves together energy efficiency improvements delivered to provide 2,024 warm, well-insulated homes with external wall insulation and new efficient heating systems that reduce residents' carbon footprints and gas consumption, and a further 64 houses fitted with internal insulation too. That thread continues through the Council's intelligent and efficient management of street lighting, recycling improvements and actions to support people into work, particularly those starting their working lives and those furthest from the employment market. And that's why I want to pick out the Young Person's Guarantee to support young people into work and education, and the Parental Employment Support Fund, which has helped 37 parents into employment and to better paid jobs. And that thread also leads to our approach to working with communities through the Perth and Kinross offer, with support for local food initiatives, promoting stronger and more cohesive communities, tackling food poverty and reducing waste. Finally, Deputy Provost, I want to say a few words about the Council's approach to equalities and engagement with equalities groups, which is integral to the Perth and Kinross offer. And that work is being recognised for the positive and proactive outreach and engagement with groups to deliver the changes in our society to make Perth a fairer place, which ensures that people with protected characteristics, those who are most severely impacted at the intersections of COVID, poverty and the cost of living crisis, are able to shape their futures and have a true sense of belonging to our communities. And it is vital that we maintain those commitments in the face of severe financial challenges. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peter Barrett. I now call on Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. This report really does show that as a council we make a difference throughout all sorts of activities in Perth and Kinross. But I'd like to just draw your attention to a small thing which really pertains to Kinrossshire, and that is this council had the vision to support and back the creation of the Lochleven Heritage Trail, both financially and with support from council officers and the councillors, and that's made a huge difference to Kinrossshire. One of the groups who were opposed to the Heritage Trail running through their land was a group called the RSPB, who were very unhappy about people walking through their land, and we had a big struggle trying to persuade them it would be a good idea. They eventually changed their mind and allowed the trail to pass through their section of land. That led to a huge increase in visitors to their visitor centre on the south side of Lochleven. So much so that they realised that there was no real access for disabled people from their centre onto the trail and onto their hides overlooking Loch Leven. As a result of that, they made a huge investment backed by the council, as can be seen in the report, to address that and create a new underpass which was disabled access friendly. This in turn has led to a huge increase in the visitors there and a huge level of new investment, as the report clearly says. So it's a really good positive story that the vision that people have through both council officers and councillors can make a big difference to both the economy locally in Perth and Kinross and also people's lives in Perth and Kinross. And I think it's really good in a day where we've got some really difficult reports to go through to have a good news story to discuss. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. I now move to Councillor Shires.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. If Councillor Drysdale refers to this as a report card, then it certainly wouldn't be one that I would be embarrassed to bring home and leave lurking in the bottom of my school bag. I'd like to pay tribute in particular to the staff from Education and Children's Services, that it was a great privilege to work with when we were in administration. And I think we should all as councillors be proud that we're still seeing strong attainment levels being delivered, positive destinations for school leavers improving, and in particular that working with officers we were able to deliver the 1140 hours of early learning and childcare against the backdrop of the COVID pandemic. But in particular I'd like to pay tribute to the officers who we worked with from 2017 on the delivery of the REACH project, which I have concerns that this council will be able to deliver similar projects in the future, because it required us to make a substantial upfront investment in order to deliver not just the longer term savings, but actually deliver real meaningful differences for young people, enabling them to stay in their communities. And I think going forward, whilst being very proud of what was delivered during the last council, I think we are going to have to really have serious conversations with partners at the Scottish Government about the level of funding that we received in order that we can deliver these meaningful changes across our council area. So again, I'm delighted to see such positive highlights in this report, and I hope that we can continue to have cross-party work to deliver similar projects in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shires, and now comment from Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. I'd also like to thank officers for bringing this report on our performance for 2021-22. The report highlights many examples and case studies of how council services and policies have a positive impact on our children, residents, business and communities. A number of these have been highlighted, but I hope you forgive me for adding to the list. For instance, as we've already heard, the excellent performance of our welfare rights team in securing an additional £5.3 million of support for families, or the 97% of school leavers moving on to a positive destination, or the fantastic 3.5% improvement in the road condition against the target figure of 0.5%, or having the lowest average days for spent by homeless people in temporary accommodation in Scotland, 51 days, compared to a Scottish average of 199 days, or the 141 community projects supported by our Community Investment Fund, or indeed the 8 commercial properties and 5 residential properties put back into use through our Adapt Your Property Fund, and also the performance in increasing affordable homes in Perth and Kinross, as we've heard. All in all, a very positive report which reflects well on our officers and staff, and which is a well-deserved reflection of the effort and commitment which they have made in order to deliver these results for the people of Perth and Kinross. There are still things we can improve and there are challenges ahead, but all in all, I very much welcome this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Now move to Councillor Rebek.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. I will be very brief here. I just want to echo a lot of what Councillor Shires commented on. I think it is important that we deliver education and children's services regardless of party politics. I think that happened in the last administration. I very much hope it happens in this one. I did make several references to early years childcare expansion in the last administration. I believe that would be transformative. I believe it's already becoming transformative. It was delivered well by the last administration. It did, however, have substantial amounts of Scottish Government investment involved in it, and it's worth noting that I think it was £36 million. But I do, on the whole, agree with Councillor Shire's comment, and it's really important that we continue to deliver education and children's services collegiately and collaboratively, and I look forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rebeck. I see no further comment. Can we agree this report? Thank you. Moving now to item 6 on the agenda, the Local Outcomes Improvement Plan 2022-2023. No, 2032, sorry. I'll call on Fiona Robertson to introduce the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. Councillors, can you hear me? Great. This report asks you to approve the new Local Outcomes Improvement Plan 2022-2032, subject to any final amendments by the CPP board. The LOIP, as you all know, is the overarching statutory plan for Perth and Kinross, setting out how the council and its partners will deliver better outcomes for the people and communities who live here. Section 4 of the cover report sets out the context for you and the background in terms of the previous Local Outcome Improvement Plan. Section 5 summarises for you the new priorities for the LOIP. These have been developed since 2020 in light of deepening inequalities driven first of all by COVID and currently by the cost of living. And Section 7 summarises for you the immediate priorities for the CPP and the LOIP in the months to come, given the impact of cost of living on many people and families in our area. Section 8 summarises how the LOIP will be monitored and reported on, and mentions the Council's transformation review of community engagement, which is a review that will strengthen how we work with communities to deliver the priorities of the LOIP. The Perth and Kinross offer, to which the CPP is also signed up, will be fundamental to our future approach. Councillors, I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. We have a first question from Councillor Colin Stewart.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. Thank you for the report, Mrs. Robertson. I wonder if I could ask, from the previous Local Outcome Improvement Plan, the 2017 version, one of the priorities there was promoting a prosperous, sustainable and inclusive economy, and that seems to have dropped out of the new priorities. But promoting a prosperous, sustainable, inclusive economy would certainly have helped with all of those new priorities, the poverty, the skills learning and development, the employability, and the mental well-being, 4 at least out of the 5. Why was that one dropped by the Community Planning Partnership?
It's a good point, Councillor Stewart. As the cover report makes clear, the LOIP is initially a 1-year action plan, and at the point it was being developed and written, the focus was very much on dealing with the immediate aftermath of COVID, and for that reason the focus was on employability, skills, digital participation, trying to mitigate those immediate fallouts from COVID. The focus on sustainable economic growth and the inequalities that can arise if economic growth is not managed sustainably is implicit in the LOIP, but I take on board your point and we will amend the narrative with the agreement of the board in light of that.
Thank you. Councillor Kogali.
Yeah, this is in reference to page 112. In 2017, the Scottish Government committed to making sure that every premise in Scotland had access to plus 30 megabits a second broadband. Obviously, those numbers show we're a long way off that. And I was wondering whether the administration had any plans to work with the Scottish Government to try and rectify that, because those numbers there are quite dire.
Barbara Renton wants to come in here. Thank you, to reply.
Thank you. I am not up to date as I should be, and my apologies for that, Council. But my understanding is that the contract in terms of the BT and the rollout of Wi-Fi and digital access is still stalled, but we'll come back to you with a bit more detail on that.
Thank you for that. I see no further questions. I would therefore. My chat is obviously moving slowly today. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. My question is in relation to 7.2, the first point under that. It's about submitting a bid to be a pilot cash first partnership. I wonder if we could have some more detail as to what that is actually about and what the process is for the bid. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Duff. Very quick response to that. We're still waiting on guidance from Scottish Government. We have a timeline of autumn-winter of this year where bids will be accepted. Up to 10 bids will be funded through Scottish Government, and we hope to submit a strong bid for Perth and Kinross.
Sorry, Lee, if I could just ask you, what actually is Cash First Partnership about then, please?
Very simply, it's a process through which the services collaborate in order to maximise income for those who are struggling. So the focus is on finance and giving people the dignity of choice, as opposed to what tends to be the first port of call just now, which is a food bank reference.
I think Councillor Donaldson, I can't see it in the chat, but Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. I actually had tried to get in through the chat, and I don't know what's happening here. But in fact, Councillor Duff has preempted my first question. So I'd like to turn to, and certainly I'd like to know more about the Cash First Partnership. But can I turn to 6.3? And this is on community empowerment. You refer to 2 localities have been agreed as an initial focus. I think I'm right in saying they are Cooper Angus and Crieff South. So what I'd like to ask is what progress have been made with both areas, and secondly, after the initial focus is completed, what other localities, are there a number that you're looking at similar initiatives? Thank you.
So on Cooper Angus, first of all, the focus, there has been quite a lot of work going on over the course of this year, and the focus has been with working with Forward Cooper Angus, which was one of the preeminent local community-led organisations in the area, which has encountered some difficulties in recent months. So we've been working with the trustees of Forward Cooper Angus, and that's been our key priority to try and move forward, particularly in relation to the protection of a number of local community assets in the town. Secondarily, there is work ongoing to look at how we develop and put in place more local pop-up services, particularly in relation to employability support and support for people with mental health, or to support their mental health. So that's the key area of focus in Cooper Angus. South Crieff, Councillor Donaldson, we've not moved on to yet, and that's purely for capacity reasons. The issues, as you will be aware, in that part of Strathearn are quite complex, and we had a discussion with various members of the community up in Strathearn a couple of weeks ago. The second part of your question was how will the CPP identify where next? Yeah. I mean, that will be partly driven by data and evidence as it continues to emerge over the next 12 months around priorities and needs. However, I think all councillors are aware that there is now a series of community action plans, particularly in rural areas, funded by European funding, which sets out a whole range of priorities and needs for over 10 community networks across the area, and we will be looking at those documents, or we are looking at those documents and advising the CPP at an area-wide level about where the localities for our focus should be after we've worked through some of the current issues in Cooper Angus and South Crieff.
Thank you. I see no more first questions, so I would go back to Councillor Kugali for your second question.
This is another one on 112, and this might be me misinterpreting some of the numbers, but it suggests that only 36.7% of people in Perth and Kinross have a mobile phone with internet access, which seems really low. And that may be me misinterpreting what it's supposed to be saying, but can we have some clarification as to whether that's what that says?
Sorry, Mike Treble. Some of the data and evidence, I think it's true to say, Councillor Kigali, around digital access and digital inclusion does need a bit of verification and checking. We do have some questions around the extent to which people are able to get online, and not just get online, but actually make full use of what that means from an inclusion perspective. We do have a digital participation working group, which is multi-agency, which Lee Haxton in my team and others are involved in, and that's led by the head of digital and IT in the council. So we do have more work to do on that, but I'm happy to pick up with you offline on some of the detail.
Thank you very much, and my apologies to Councillor Colin Stewart. You were in first, but I didn't see you. Councillor Colin Stewart.
That's quite all right. Thank you, Deputy Provost. A quick request, if you like, rather than a question on 7.3. The other CPP partners will be considering their own level of financial commitments, expecting that will be confirmed at the next board meeting. I think it'd be useful if we could have feedback after that board meeting on what that was. But my question is on 8.1, where the new CPP Climate Change Working Group has been established. Obviously, the Council has recently established a Climate Change Commission and a Climate Change and Sustainability Committee, and I just wondered whether there was any risk of triple handling the issue here and therefore losing focus.
The answer to your first point is yes. The answer to the second is that the reason why the CPP has established a climate change working group is because the CPP is about inequality. It's about seeking out and hopefully destroying stubborn inequality. Climate change and the climate emergency raises a number of equality challenges around fuel poverty, is an obvious example, food security is another. So for that reason, the remit of the climate change working group is quite tightly drawn, Councillor Stewart, to make sure that it's not cutting across the Council's own climate change strategy or indeed the climate change plans of other CPP partners.
Thank you. A second question from Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. I'll try and phrase it as a question, but I'm not quite sure that Mrs. Robertson can answer it. But on the ACORN categories, it talks about a number of different groupings, like affluent achievers, rising prosperity, comfortable communities, financially stretched, and then it says urban adversity. And it goes on to describe that as being the most deprived areas of large and small towns and cities. Household incomes are low, nearly always below the national average, finding life hard and experiencing the most difficult social and financial conditions. There's no mention of rural adversity in there, if you like, and I think that is an omission. I believe, I appreciate that that's a category description, if you like, that you don't have control over. But is there a recognition of the rural adversity that some of our more remote residents in Perth and Kinross are facing through ACORN? Thank you.
ACORN and ACORN data is one method that we use to assess and understand and prioritise inequality. There are others that we use, in particular the Scottish Index of Multiple Deprivation, which is really our key fount of knowledge, and we use that. But we use ACORN and other means as well, Councillor Duff, to really triangulate how we understand deprivation, how it affects Perth and Kinross. So your point is absolutely right, but I'm not here, as you say, to defend the ACORN methodology particularly. All of these tools are a bit of a blunt instrument. SIMD, however, if you look at that and other, including ONS, Office of National Statistics resources online, give us a pretty good picture of rural inequality and deprivation in Perth and Kinross, and importantly, how that compares not just with the rest of Scotland, but the rest of the UK.
Thank you. I now see no further questions. If my chat is keeping up to date, I hope it is. I'll ask the council leader to move the report.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. And I think with to address Councillor Duff's concerns, I agree with them. A lot of these tools are blunt tools. It's incumbent on us, who are closest to our community, along with our partners, to highlight what is obviously difficulties within all our wards, and that's what makes us as a local authority probably better informed than some of the national statistics we get, because Perth and Kinross is obviously different from every other local authority. So we've all got a job to play in getting the proper message across, instead of just relying solely on national figures. So thanks, councillors. This strategic document is integral to all the big strategic issues in front of us today. The Local Outcomes Improvement Plan, the Council's Corporate Plan, and our medium-term financial plan are all interlinked. The cost of living crisis and the negative consequences which may follow for our communities may be severe. Indeed, if we do not take urgent, concerted action with our CPP partners, things are going to be extremely difficult for us all. It's for this reason that you're later today going to be asked to approve the creation of a new anti-poverty task force. It is also for this reason the CPP board is making its own statement of intent to protect the most vulnerable. I look forward to hearing more from my CPP board colleagues on how they will progress these actions in the months to come. As co-chair of the CPP board, I believe we must be totally focused on joint action, including pooling our significant resources to ensure inequality in Perth and Kinross does not deepen over the next decade. That should be the legacy of the new Local Outcomes Improvement Plan. I'd like to thank all CP partners who have contributed to the development of this plan, and I move this report to Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask Councillor Drysdale to second the report?
Thank you, Deputy Provost. Colleagues, this is an important document that sets out our strategic priorities as the Council, together with its community planning partners, seeks to tackle inequality across Perth and Kinross in all its forms over a 10-year horizon, but with an initial strong focus on actions over the next 12 months. The statistics presented in this report highlight the sheer scale of the challenges presented by the demographic of the region, our mix of urban, rural and remote rural communities, the impact of COVID, and of the significant cost of living crisis we all face. With a collective and sustained effort, we hope to reduce the stubborn social and economic inequalities highlighted to help everyone in Perth and Kinross live life well. I'm delighted to second this today. Thank you, Deputy Provost.
Thank you very much. We now move to comment, and the first comment is from Councillor McCall.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. My comment is a sort of general comment. First of all, I want to thank officers for the report and the good work that's been done in this area. But I noticed that in several places in the report that food banks and larders are grouped together in relation to food insecurity. And while community larders and fridges do have a role to play in addressing food insecurity, their primary purpose is to tackle food waste And that I feel needs to be recognised as a differentiator in this report in particular. Even before this cost of living crisis, there was some misunderstandings in local communities that the community fridges and larders were indeed food banks, and a lot of work has been done by community organisations to help explain to their local residents that the food fridges and larders are open to all, and that you do not need a referral, and that by accessing that you're helping to reduce food waste, but that you're not taking food away from people who normally would be referred to food banks. So I think that's quite an important differentiator. I know that local communities have worked very hard, and in fact our own councillors here, Councillor Barrett, is running a very successful food waste reduction programme in my own ward. And so I think for the purpose of these reports that are in the public domain, it's really important that these things are differentiated clearly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCall. Councillor Peter Barrett.
Thanks, Deputy Provost. And I want to echo some of the comments that have been made by the previous speakers. I think if there is one document that I'd recommend that members retain and keep referring back to, then it's their local improvement outcome plan and the 5 strategic priorities set out in section 5 on page 102 of the pack. If members need reminding of why we got into local government and what are the burning issues in our patch which need to fight to take precedence over demand and demand rather than need, then the stats in this report and the picture that it paints of the severe and persistent inequalities and widening poverty gap in Perth and Kinross provide the inspiration and motivation that we might need before every local action partnership meeting, and a ready reckoner to judge and weigh all the community investment fund applications we may have to consider. I, along with my Liberal Democrat colleagues, attended the Getting to Know PCAVs event on Monday. Councillor Duff was there as well, and it was very useful to hear from the local third sector, and I was struck by a comment made by Dr. Graham Ilsley on a survey that PCAVs had conducted into loneliness in Perth and Kinross. 78% of respondents had responded yes to the question, have you ever felt lonely? And only 12% that they'd said that they'd never experienced being left out, isolated, or a lack of companionship, whereas between 50 and 60% of respondents had. We heard a startling statistic for me that loneliness and social isolation are associated with a reduced lifespan equal to somebody smoking 15 cigarettes per day and greater than somebody with obesity. Loneliness is also linked to an increased risk of heart disease, dementia, anxiety, depression, addiction and suicide. It's therefore very welcome that the report includes an action on the development of community circles to support vulnerable and isolated adults. And I think this is something that fits exactly with the Perth and Kinross offer. I've also seen other great examples of local people and groups tackling loneliness and social isolation, promoting better mental and physical health even, and well-being, ranging from knit and natter groups to baby bumps, football and golf memories, a wide variety of groups at our libraries, the Chinese Community Lunch Club, which Andy Chan could speak about, Andy's Man Club and the Saints Walking football groups. The list goes on, and there are definite opportunities, I think, that we need to develop and exploit and link to cosy spaces with groups tackling loneliness. I hope that our Cash First partnership bid is successful. I'm happy to offer any support that I can to assist the bid. Cash First solutions into poverty offer both speed and dignity and agility without the stigma associated, or which can be associated with other types of direct support. So I'm very happy to support that and the paper.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. Councillor Leishman now.
Thank you, Deputy Provost, and to Fiona Robertson for the report. No one is under any illusion that the many challenges we face today are going to be easily solved. Scotland has higher levels of inequality relative to most other UK regions, and we are experiencing the biggest deterioration in living standards in 70+ years. And with rising social and economic inequalities, class division and poverty are impacting residents in every ward of our region. The data and evidence presented to us is stark, and the identified strategic priorities are of huge importance as we aim to tackle the deprivation and disadvantages many of our residents face. The local outcomes improvement plan is something that takes into account the current severity of life for many of our residents, and we welcome its community engagement, participation and empowerment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Rebek.
Thank you again, Deputy Provost. It was just a brief comment about Perth and Kinross offer. I agree with Fiona Robertson that will be crucial to this council's success going forward. I think that changing the culture of a workforce is really difficult. I think we have a fantastic workforce in Perth and Kinross Council. Indeed, they are our greatest asset. I think it's incumbent upon everybody in this room, whether it's a senior council officer or an elected member, to support our workforce in terms of time and energy and training, because Perth and Kinross offer will not work unless it's delivered at the coalface, and I think we need to be very aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rebek. I see no further comment. Can we therefore agree the paper? Thank you for that, and I now hand back to the Provost for future items. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Provost. Members, we're going to take a short 5-minute comfort break before we move on to the next item, which is expected to be quite lengthy, so we will reconvene at 5 minutes past 12. item 7. If I can ask Claire Mailer, the Executive Lead for Strategic Planning and Transformation, to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Provost. Councillors, I am pleased to present our draft corporate plan, which sets out our proposed vision and priorities for the next 5 years. The draft plan has been developed from our assessment of community needs, including feedback that we have received through a range of mechanisms, meetings with community groups, as well as officers, group leaders and some elected members. The plan is aligned with our values and designed to address or mitigate the impact of the many challenges our organisation and communities are facing over the next 5 years. The 7 priorities we've collectively identified are to tackle poverty, to tackle climate change and support sustainable places, to grow a sustainable, inclusive local economy, to enable our children and young people to achieve their full potential, to protect and care for our most vulnerable, to support and promote physical and mental well-being, and at all points to place communities at the heart of how we work. We remain committed to working with and within our communities to deliver on these priorities in a way that recognises local needs. Each priority is linked to our strategic outcomes and is underpinned by supporting actions and performance indicators, which we will report on annually to demonstrate how well we are doing. We have also listened to your feedback and ensured that the plan is shorter, written in plain English and in a clear and accessible format. Over the next 2 months, officers will be taking this draft document and testing it with our local residents. Do these priorities make sense? Are they important to our communities? Is anything missing? The final version will be our guide and focus over the next 5 years through a transformation and change strategy, our financial strategy, and budget setting and workforce management arrangements. We will ensure that we have the right people and resources in the right places at the right time to deliver on these priorities. It will be our guide to help us as we make decisions about where to prioritise our activity and resources to deliver on our commitments to listen to and work with our communities. I would therefore ask for your support in asking local people to get involved, to have their say, to share and support opportunities to get involved, whether that's in face-to-face sessions or through our online survey. Once we have received all of the feedback, we will bring back a finalised version to Council in December for final approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions on the report? I'm going to give it a second, but I'm not seeing any questions. Oh, okay, thank you. Oh, Councillor Ian James.
Thanks, Provost. I'll get the ball rolling, and it seems nobody wants to talk on it. Thanks for the presentation and the document itself. I was looking at page, I'm just looking now, page 17, which is, no, it's not, I lied about 17, page 5 of the document, and also on page, there's no page number on it, but the draft priorities, where we speak about one of our priorities being children and young people grow up safe, respected, well educated and confident in their ability to realise their full potential. I get all of that, but I would also like to include respectful, because to be respected, you need to be respectful. So is there a possibility of adding respectful as well, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor James. Claire, do you want to take that feedback?
Yes, thank you for your question and your comment, Councillor James. As I said in my introductory remarks, what we will be doing is we'll be considering all of the feedback and we will give that full consideration for the final draft. So thank you for that feedback.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, I'm not seeing any other questions and therefore I'm going to invite the Leader of the Council to move the report.
Thanks very much, Provost. Provost and councillors, I have a great pleasure in moving the council's draft corporate plan for 22 to 27, which has been developed to set a clear strategic direction for the organisation over the next 5 years. The plan sets our vision for a Perth and Kinross where everyone can live well, free from poverty and equality. At this stage, I'd like to take the opportunity of thanking the officers for the work that they've done and taking ideas that we put forward and formulating in this document. I'd also like to thank other elected members who've made constructive, criticisms, constructive comments as we've moved forward with other elected members, and I hope they appreciate that we've taken these on board so far and will continue to take them on. And Councillor James, etc., with this being a draft plan, will welcome any input from elected members moving forward, and also members of the community. That's the idea of this being an evolving document. This vision is supported by this vision is supported by a number of key priorities, including tackling poverty, protecting and caring for our most vulnerable people, growing our economy, enabling our children and young people to achieve their full potential, and crucially, placing communities at the heart of how we work. This underpins our Perth and Kinross offer, putting people at the heart of all that we do and recognising that we all have something to offer our local areas, communities and neighbourhoods. As a council, we are committed to serving the people and communities of Perth and Kinross and delivering the best possible services that we can within the resources at our disposal. In doing this, we recognise that we need to continually consider the services that make the biggest difference to those in the greatest need. Therefore, this plan is not intended to sit on a shelf. It is intended to be a working document with clear actions and performance measures for each area of priority. It is a guide to help us prioritise our resources where they're most needed, and it's a statement of our intention to work in partnership with our communities in Perth and Kinross to ensure we deliver on the commitments we have made. This will bring huge opportunities and energy to what we do as an organisation, allowing us to respond to the continually changing environment and context within which we work. Finally, this is our corporate plan, and the draft reflects the feedback officers have already received from leaders and elected members following recent briefing sessions. Over the next few months, there will be a widespread consultation and engagement exercise to help us finalise the priorities within the plan, ensuring that we are making a real impact on the lives of people living in our area and focusing on the right areas. As you know, I'm committed to working collaboratively with all elected members and partners, and we encourage you all to have your say through the opportunities between now and December. The priorities within the plan need to reflect the views and, importantly, the needs of our communities. So please also encourage your constituents and communities to get involved and have their say. Once we have signed off and agreed the plan in December, our focus will be to work across all areas of the organisation to ensure that our budgets are aligned with our priorities and we have the right people in the right places to deliver on these. Provost, I'm very happy to move this paper.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Mr. Deputy Leader.
Thank you, Provost. It's easily seen that I haven't had prior sight of the Leader's speech because I was going to say much the same, but I shall be as brief as I possibly can. First of all, I would like to sincerely thank officers for their considerable efforts in drafting this document to reflect the Council's intended plans for the next 5 years. As has been previously stated, we have also sought input from other political parties, and we will continue as far as possible to do that, as we remain very willing to listen to constructive input from our political opponents in the best interests of the people of Perth and Kinross. In the same way, we shall positively embrace, of course we will, the constructive feedback that we receive from the public consultation exercise that is about to start. Both Claire and the leader have set out clearly our priorities, so I will not repeat here, but suffice to say that I wholeheartedly second this motion and commend it to colleagues across the chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Leader. Councillor Collins-Stewart, do you have a comment?
Thank you, Provost. Picking up on the point that the leader made, that groups and elected members had the opportunity to engage with officers prior to this coming forward as a draft. I just wanted to put on record my thanks to the officers for the constructive way that they engaged in that process. I note that the corporate plan, while I still think it's maybe a little on the long side, is shorter than the previous one. And just to repeat my point that you know, efforts to shorten a document like this will make it more comprehensible, but I realise that significant efforts have gone already into shortening it from the previous version. And also to say to officers in whichever department that they're working, when I look at Appendix 1 on pages 25, 26 and 27 of the draft plan, and I see all of the various strategies and plans, many of which will be mandated by legislation, but some of which we have chosen to adopt ourselves, that actually distilling that down into operational practices and what our council staff have to implement and enact on the ground is a mammoth task. So any efforts that we can make in simplifying the number of plans and strategies, I think, would also help the operation of the council and the achievement of all of these key strategic objectives.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. Councillor John Rebbeck with the next comment.
Thank you, Provost. I think corporate plans can be in danger of being very stuffy documents, as Councillor Stewart alludes to, but I think at the core of this one, it recognises that we are elected by our communities for our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rebbeck. Councillor Brian Leishman.
Thank you, Provost, and to Claire Mailer for the report. People's lives have been disrupted by the twin crisis of climate breakdown and the COVID-19 pandemic. And now we are in the grip of a national economic crisis, with the pound hitting an all-time low on Monday of this week. Alarmingly, the continuation of extreme right-wing policies that will only serve to widen inequality shows no sign of abating, with the first 3 weeks of leadership under this new Prime Minister seeing tax cuts for the select, prosperous few and doing nothing to meaningfully help the many in actual need. And while COVID-19 has created new social and economic problems, it has also compounded those that existed pre-pandemic. Austerity politics and the decimation of essential services that we rely on has hit everyone in our communities hard, but the disadvantaged, vulnerable and worst off the hardest. Scandalously, there are 13,000 people in Perth and Kinross earning less than the living wage, with a total of 24,000 people all over our region considered to be in lower paid work. These workers, our residents, are incapable of participating in and enjoying society as their wages languish and the cost of essentials surge the way that they are. People in Perth and Kinross are at breaking point because of the wealth, income and health inequalities we have in Scotland and the UK. And these inequalities are structurally created and are the result of economic and political decision making. And inequalities are rising. Right now, wealth in Scotland is distributed even more unevenly than income, with a household in the top 10% of the wealth distribution typically holding £1.6 million in financial, physical, property and pension wealth. Compare that to a typical household in the bottom 10% holding just £7,500 across these categories. We also have chronic health inequalities, with the shameful fact that there is a 13-year difference for males and a 9-year difference for females in life expectancy between Scotland's most and least deprived areas. The rise in income, wealth and power inequalities due to mass privatisation of industries and disinvestment in key core services has been the cause of health inequalities. and has massively contributed to the alcohol, drug and violence problems that are so prevalent in our communities. So that is the real world we want to see our corporate plan make a difference to. Perth and Kinross Labour Group think there is much to admire in this corporate plan. It is ambitious, but the problems our residents face are mighty. We acknowledge that the issues we are dealing with are complex and that they need multifaceted solutions. However, we believe that there should be a clear prioritisation of the issues to demonstrate to our residents that we are dealing with them as effectively as possible. We appreciate the inclusive cross-party nature that the administration has adopted in creating the plan, as well as the skills and efforts from our officers. If we are to address the imbalances and inequalities that our residents face, then all 40 elected members will need to pull together for the common good. And for the successful delivery of this plan, council staff in all departments must be supported in every way possible, including in their pay packet, as they are not immune to this crisis either. Every day, our workforce show the ambition, compassion and integrity that we as councillors need to emulate and support in our leadership role. And we will continue to rely on their effort, skill and expertise. Examples of this are many, are epitomised by our housing department's home first approach to tackling homelessness, and education in Perth and Kinross has helped deliver impressive pass rate figures. This achievement after the pressures, challenges and upheaval in the last 2 to 3 years is remarkable. And our appreciation goes to all council staff who have worked so hard in delivering key services to our residents through the COVID pandemic. We all hope that this plan can lead to improvements, achievements and successes for everyone in Perth and Kinross. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Leishman. Councillor Illingworth, whilst others might not have heard your comments, I did hear them, and it is incumbent on all elected members to be respectful when others are speaking, whether you agree with them or not. And indeed, the Deputy Provost also heard you. So if you would like to apologise for speaking over Councillor Leishman at the back, I would invite you to do so.
Happy to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Illingworth. Councillor John Duff with the next comment, please.
Thank you, Provost. I just want to welcome the report and appreciate that a lot of effort has gone into pulling a document of this nature together. So thanks very much. Sorry.
Somebody has a microphone on their speakers on their laptop, perhaps. Everyone just check.
No, it's not.
It's yourself that's lighting up. Got it now. I think
Okay,
that's it
we've
now.
got it right. Thank you, Councillor Duff.
Thank you. Yes, I'll just restart that. I wanted to say I very much welcome the report. I appreciate that a lot of effort has gone into pulling a document of this complexity and nature together, and I'd like to thank the officers very much for presenting the paper today. Obviously, this is a kind of living document, but it's also the key document for the future direction of Perth and Kinross in terms of all our resources, whether they are budgets, officer time, our equipment, our buildings, etc. So I think it's vital that we pick up on our people's needs and priorities and ensure that everything at our fingertips is used to best effect. And in that regard, I'll certainly be calling upon my Conservative colleagues to highlight the plan and the consultation to our constituents and bodies such as our community councils in order that we can make sure that our final priorities as a council are as accurate as possible and that we use everything, as I say, to best effect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. I'm seeing no other comments requested in the chat, and therefore I'd invite the Leader of the Council to summate if he wishes.
No, I think everything that's needed to be said has been said, and I'm looking forward to feedback both from the communities and from other elected members, and hopefully I take on board some of what Councillor Leishman says, and hopefully that working together, all 40 of us, with the officers and our communities, that we can make a difference in some of the desperate areas that he was highlighting there, because that's where we all came into politics. even at this level, we came into politics to do our best for our communities. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Members, can we agree the report? Thank you very much. We now move on to item 8, which is tackling poverty and the cost of living, and I'm going to invite Claire Mailer, the Executive Lead for Strategic Planning and Transformation, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Provost. Councillors, the report that you are being asked to consider sets out some key measures to further strengthen our approach to work with our partners and communities to mitigate the impacts of poverty and the cost of living crisis on people within our communities. As you will see from the report, many households here in Perth and Kinross are struggling to make ends meet. We know that we have over 5,155 children here in Perth and Kinross living in poverty. We also have some very specific challenges due to our geography. For many families, difficult choices such as heating or eating are daily considerations. Tackling poverty is a complex issue and requires a truly collaborative effort. It is not something that the Council can do alone. All sectors across Perth and Kinross have a key and important role, as evidenced from the range of activities in the Local Child Poverty Action Report and the LOIP that we have just considered. Communities across the area continue to work tirelessly to provide support at a local level. We have a committed network of third sector agencies who continue to provide a wide range of services, support and advice. And we've had good engagement with our business sector, and staff in all of our frontline teams and services are supporting individual households and communities every day. So whilst no single agency has the power to end poverty, by working in partnership there is much that we can do to make the lives and life chances of those living in poverty brighter and better. The first proposal within this report, therefore, is to establish a Perth and Kinross anti-poverty task force to bring together the Council, local businesses, third sector organisations and communities to work more collaboratively to help mitigate the impacts of poverty and the current cost of living crisis. However, the cost of living crisis means that we must focus on some immediate actions, particularly over the winter months. You will see within the report that we're currently developing and delivering a winter response plan to enable a coordinated response to ensure people receive the support that they need. As part of this response, we are asking the Council to support a cost of living strategy, which details 7 key commitments that we will take in the coming weeks and months to support households through the cost of living crisis. Finally, councillors will be aware that the Council has made significant investment to date in supporting our communities to cope with the difficult impacts of poverty and the cost of living crisis. Today we have a further ask. In addition to previously committed funding, it is proposed that a further investment of $470,000 is approved to support communities and community organisations over the winter period. We are proposing that the funding is drawn down from the COVID Reserves Fund, and you'll see within the report the range of actions and initiatives that we would propose that this fund supports. I would stress, however, that it is our intention to continue to monitor the ongoing impact, and through liaison with communities and third sector groups, we will identify any emerging pressures and seek additional funding where and when a need is identified. None of us could have anticipated the current financial challenges faced by a significant number of households across Perth and Kinross. For many families, this winter will be hugely challenging. The measures outlined in this report, if agreed, will further underline the Council's commitment to ensuring that residents across Perth and Kinross have the support that they need. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I've got a team of staff who are very hooked into some of the frontline issues who'll also be happy to support answering any questions that you may have.
Thank you. I have first question from Councillor Keith Allen.
Thank you, Provost, and thank you, Claire, for the report. Claire, my question is about the additional funding, and it's great that we've got this proposal for £470,000 to spend. It doesn't matter how much that fund is, it will never be enough. I appreciate that, and we'll fully support whatever we do. The second point that you make there is £170,000 to community groups and organisations to purchase and distribute warm home packs, as well as the provision of community food. I'm just trying to understand, is that £170,000 for packs alone? How many packs would that generate? Given that we've spoken already about 5,000 children in poverty, I'm just wondering how far that's going to go. And of those packs that are generated, is it first come, first served? How are we going to serve our communities with those packs? Thank you.
Claire Miller.
Thank you, Provost. So the 170,000 that's been identified for community organisations to purchase and distribute warm home packs also includes a component of the provision of additional community food. So 50,000 of this will be for the provision of the warm home packs. That will comprise all or some of the following elements: so blankets, hot water bottles, thermos flasks, slow cookers, and various other kind of provisions that individual households might need. The remaining 120,000 is for additional community food provision. So in liaison with our communities group, and I'm not sure if David Stoker or Lee Haxton are here, and some of the feedback that we've had from some of the groups providing additional food, we are aware of the fact that there is an additional need for more food provision out to food banks and to larders over the winter period. These will be distributed by community organisations to vulnerable people where a need has been identified. But as I said in my introductory remarks, we will continue to monitor the situation, and if additional need is identified, then we will be coming back to Council and asking to draw down additional funds.
Thank you, Claire Miller. Bailey Ahern, you have some questions.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you, Claire, for your opening remarks. My original question was going to be, why are we setting up another group, another task force to look at this? But you, in your opening remarks, you said that we're bringing together those existing groups and the council and external groups that are working towards this together in one place. I did notice, though, that on the paper 6 on page 117, which starts as a strategic objectives in the LOIP, there was no mention about setting up a task force to move forward. And also in your opening remarks, you mentioned it's there to mitigate the impacts about helping people, and the money that we're putting forward has already been discussed. That's to help us through the winter. We're going to need to look at more money next year to help people through these impacts. What is actually being done to help bring these families out of poverty? Because this is just a continuous cycle of providing money to sort of help them through several months or whatever it is to get through. But we need to actually, instead of having an endless cycle, we need to do something to help people get out of poverty. And I wonder what the task force's plans are to do that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bailey Ahern. Claire Miller.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Ahern. So in the first instance, in terms of the comment about the task force and bringing together a number of groups, there is a huge amount of activity, as you will see from the report and the papers within the report already. There is a third sector poverty group, local businesses are coming together, and we as a council are coming together with all of these wider organisations. As I said, not one single service or agency can tackle poverty alone, and that real coordinated effort will be absolutely key. We had hoped to, we have had contact with community planning partners through the LOIP in terms of the task force, and obviously community planning partners will obviously be invited to sit on the task force if they so wish. In terms of your point about the focus of the task force, we have got an immediate crisis that we're facing. You'll see within the paper there's quite a lot of detail about the winter planning arrangements that we're dealing with, and much of that, as you've described in your comment in your question, is the reactive stuff. What I absolutely would stress is that one of the big focuses of the task force is to tackle poverty in the longer term, and we've got a range of strategic actions and a huge number of focus around and about employability, rural affordable housing more generally, some of the real issues that we've got in terms of transport and transport costs, good paid employment, and indeed childcare in many of our areas. So you'll see there's a high level overview of the local child poverty action report in the appendices that
details the more strategic, more preventative approach that we are taking in the longer term, and that very much links through to the corporate plan and priorities and the actions that we've outlined within the corporate plan. So that much longer term plan over the course of the next 5 years that we will be prioritising. It is our intention to bring the local child poverty action report to Council in November. We did have a bit of an ask to see if we could bring it along today, but that hasn't been concluded and it hasn't yet been signed off by the CPP. But that does set out the longer term strategic direction, and you will see within the appendix quite a number of different outcomes there in terms of maximising income from employment, reducing the essential cost of living, the preventative work in terms of breaking the cycle of poverty. So we can give more detail of that when the Local Child Poverty Action Report is published.
Thank you, Claire Miller. Billy Ahern, did you have another question, or is that you?
Yeah, I did. If you want me to ask it now.
Yes, please.
Yeah, local action partnerships. Certainly in the city centre one of our priorities is tackling poverty. And I just wondered what is either the leader of the council or his officers see the local action partnerships doing moving forward, and whether they're going to get funding to help the poverty in their local areas.
Mr. Leader.
Well, that will be decided through the budget process. Obviously, about the level of funding that local action partnerships get. To respond to your earlier comment, I cannot believe that anyone sitting in this room doesn't realise the immediacy of the problem, and we maybe have to look to national governments for why this problem is continuing. And you're asking, we need to break out of it. Yes, we certainly do. And we maybe have to look further out from here that make decisions on tax and spend, etc. We can only deal with what's in front of us. And hopefully all together, we can surely see we need to do this. The reason that we're bringing it forward, we're not waiting for the CPP to come forward with its, when it comes, the corporate plan comes back in December, I think. We need to work now, Chris, and I hope that I'd love to be, that's what the utopia is, that nobody has to go to food banks. Food bank donations are falling because less people can afford to put something in the food bank. So.
Can I respond to that?
You may. You very, very, very briefly,
I am.
and then I'm going to Councillor Cook-Alley for his 2 questions.
Yeah, certainly I did not indicate that there wasn't an immediate problem, and I didn't say that at all. There is, and we need to tackle that head on right now.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cook-Alley.
Yeah, under 6.12, there's obviously a breakdown of the spending of the £470,000. If we could have a little bit more detail on some of them, that'd be quite helpful, I think, because personally I've got, no idea what the £5,000 cover engagement payments is, and just a bit more detail there would be quite helpful.
Okay, we're getting quite close to getting into operational level detail there, but Claire Miller, do you want to provide any higher level overview on this?
Yeah, I can, and I think what I can do, councillors, is we can provide a more detailed overview and a briefing following council today. I've covered the detail in terms of the provision of the warm home packs and the provision of community food. 150,000 will be offered up to organisations who are opening up their doors to provide warm spaces. We've done a little bit of analysis and had some feedback from community groups in terms of estimated costs. So this will include costs for room rental, energy, staffing costs, a small amount for tea, coffee and miscellaneous items. Grants that have been provided by other councils have ranged from £1,000 to £2,500. However, we are of the view that this will be insufficient to cover the energy costs of additional provision. So again, we will continue to monitor that as we go through the winter and reflect accordingly as we tweak. The £5,000 to cover engagement payments for people with lived experience, I think, is really to acknowledge for us to really truly engage and deliver services that reflect the needs of people with lived experience. We really need them on board to tell us of their experiences, to tell us what works and to tell us what doesn't. And what we will be doing is using that money initially through the task force to provide some kind of provision and some kind of an acknowledgement and recognition for their time and effort in supporting us in this work. But I can provide a more detailed briefing following council today.
Thank you. We can have that as an action point for a briefing note. Councillor Cagalli, you had another question?
Yes, under 5.5, there's reference to a fuel poverty app with NHS Tayside. I was just, again, wondering whether we could have a comment on what that actually is and what the goals are with that.
Claire Miller.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm having a couple of technical issues here. I'm not sure, Carol, if you're on the call and you could provide a wee bit more detail about it, or Paul. Certainly the app is intended to be used by staff who are out and about, all frontline officers who are out and about in the field, who will be in a position to sort of talk through some of the particular issues to support households with being more fuel efficient within their home, to put signpost them to where help might be available. So certainly NHS colleagues are developing this, so really to enable frontline workers to identify if poverty might be an issue and to signpost and refer them to where help and support is available.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Braun next, please.
Thanks, Provost. I'm actually going right to the end of the pack, really. I'm on page 92 of Appendix 4. It's a question, but a couple of points in the question. The first one is to ask, we're having 5 members from the council. Are they elected officers, elected members or officers who are going to be involved in the task force? And my second point, which I really wanted to ask, was on page 92, we quote, a future enhancement would be to recruit members with lived experience of poverty. I would have thought that was a priority from day one, that people who've had experience. The old saying is, if you've walked the walk, you can talk the talk. So if I can have an answer to that, please.
Yes, the Leader of Council is going to provide an answer to the first part. I think Claire Miller to the second part.
Thanks for the question, Councillor Braun. And it's maybe it wasn't made clear in the paper that the 5 representatives will be 5 elected members. What will be, in my intention, would be that if the council agrees the paper, there will be 1 member from each group within the council as we move forward in a collaborative way to tackle this problem. So hopefully that would satisfy you, that answer.
Thank you for that part.
Claire Miller on the lived experience membership part.
Yes, thank you. Absolutely. It is our intention, I think, as I described in my answer to the previous question, to recruit people to the task force with lived experience. We are aware, however, that sometimes this can take time to identify and recruit people with lived experience. We are keen to set up and establish the task force as soon as we possibly can, for all of the obvious reasons stated within the report, but we will do our very best. We have had some really good feedback through some of the work that we've already undertaken with Strathclyde University in terms of the lived experience report on child poverty, so we have got some contacts, but we will reach out to those that we know, but it might take a wee bit longer than the time to actually get the task force established. But I absolutely agree with the point that you've made there, Councillor Braun.
Thank you. Councillor Drysdale.
Thank you, thank you, Provost. Since this paper went into the public domain last week, it's become increasingly apparent to me that there's a huge enthusiasm. There always has been, but it's more than I believed, among community groups across Perth and Kinross to get involved in this task force. And indeed, there's obviously a lot of activity going on by community groups already. Given the logistics of the setting up of the task force, can you give, or what level of assurance can you give that the enthusiasm and the energy that has been displayed can be harnessed and brought to good use and collective use as quickly as possible?
Claire Miller.
Yes, I think you raise a very good point there in terms of the enthusiasm, and certainly that has been
our inboxes, I think, have been inundated over the course of the last wee while. We have got a session that we're holding with Lynn and Nick from the Welfare Rights team tomorrow at the library, and we've had really good feedback or a really good response to that. So we're anticipating a good number of people from community groups will be in attendance. So whilst we have the task force and it only has 18 members of it, there are a number or a range of other opportunities for community groups to get involved. There is a third sector poverty group that has been established, and we will have discussions with community groups tomorrow in terms of how we can ensure that kind of wider coordinated approach and other opportunities for them to get involved. We have got our Winter Action Plan group, and we've got representatives from the third sector on that, so consideration will be given to widening that group as well. So I think a lot of this work is underway, but absolutely I think I take on your point there, and we will ensure that everybody has an opportunity to become involved in some way or another.
Thank you. Final question from Bailey Ahern.
Thank you very much. I know the NHS are probably going to be partners in this, but what I haven't seen, unless I've missed it on the paper or the appendix as well, is the impact on mental health. And mental health plays a huge part in some people's reason why that they're in poverty, either through depression or suicidal thoughts, making them unable to go to work. So is there going to be a good look at how poverty affects mental health, and equally how mental health affects families going into poverty?
Claire Miller.
Yes, thank you, Bailey Ahern. Absolutely, and I think probably that I'll refer you back both to the LOIP and indeed the corporate plan, where that real strategic approach is taken in terms of looking at all of the different priorities, indeed within the LOIP, but also within the corporate plan. Our emergency response obviously will look immediately at the initial basic needs, but ongoing support. Our frontline officers are very well trained and very aware of the kind of the wider issues and impacts, and when they're out and about in the frontline roles, absolutely do pick these wider issues up in terms of directing and the provision of support. But that forms, I suppose, our immediate frontline operational response, but also that strategic overview that we've seen within both the corporate plan and indeed the LOIP that we've just considered.
Thank you, Claire Miller. Leader of the Council to move the report, please.
Thanks, Provost. Thanks, elected members. Normally when I stand up here, and it's not been so long in, I normally say I'm pleased to move a report. I'm actually angry that we're having to remove this report. What position to be in Perth and Kinross and other places across the country in 2022. And I'm relieved and assured that we will get full council approval for this, because we're trying to do this for everybody who's out there. So, Provost, I'm not pleased to move this report. We have to do it. So it sets out our ongoing commitment to all that we do, to do all that we can to work with partners and communities to tackle and mitigate the impacts of poverty and the current cost of living crisis here in Perth and Kinross. We are all very aware of rising inflation, interest rate hikes, and increases in the cost of food, fuel, and energy, basics of life that are squeezing household budgets more and more. This affects us, all of us, and we hear about it on the news daily. We see it in our people. Although many people will see Perth and Kinross as an affluent area, we know that there are pockets of real poverty, and even in areas, and even the other areas of high employment, many are on low wages. The experience of poverty for individuals, families, and communities across Perth and Kinross will be very different. For some, it will be lack of income, often linked to the availability of work. For others, it will manifest in poverty of housing, whilst for others, poor health, limited transport, access to further education and training are all experiences that may be both manifestations of poverty and or symptoms of the experience and lack of opportunity facing people across our area. We know that approximately 1 in 4 children in Perth and Kinross are living in poverty. That's over 5,155 children. The current pressures are placing more and more people at risk of poverty. Low-income families have fewer savings, less resilience, and are more adversely affected by rising costs. Consequently, in-work poverty is becoming a reality for more families. For this reason, we have made tackling poverty one of our key priorities in our corporate plan. However, we cannot afford to wait for the final plan to be approved in December. We need to act now. We're on the precipice of a crisis that will hit our most vulnerable residents the hardest. Those who are already struggling to make ends meet could easily find themselves in an impossible situation. The measures proposed in the report set out our first key commitments to deliver on our new priorities. By establishing an anti-poverty task force, we will quickly bring together key partners with a clear commitment to share knowledge and expertise, to listen and learn from lived experience within our communities, and to identify potential solutions to mitigate the effects of poverty and the current cost of living crisis. The proposed cost of living strategy identifies several key commitments, which will be the focus of our work in the coming weeks and months, hopefully not years, to support households through the current crisis. We have already made significant investment to support communities to cope with the impacts of poverty and the cost of living crisis. We have identified further need and are proposing that we make an additional investment of 470,000 to provide support for warm spaces, provision of community food, warm home packs, and several other measures detailed in this report. This is only going to be a start for us. We will listen to the people who are out there on the front line. We'll listen to the community groups. We'll listen to where we can best place our money. This is the first bullet on something that will be a continual battle throughout this winter and possibly beyond. Not one service, community or agency can tackle the challenges our communities are facing alone. As a council, we have a duty to help, but we don't have a monopoly on wisdom. The proposals detailed within this report will cement our collective commitment as a council to work with local businesses, third sector organisations and communities to tackle and mitigate the impacts of poverty on our people, the people of Perth and Kinross. I'd like to thank everyone in the Chamber for their ongoing support on this important matter. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leader. Councillor Leishman is going to second the report.
Thank you, Provost, and thank you to Councillor Lane. Last week, our new Chancellor said, "For too long we've indulged in a fight about redistribution," by which I interpreted this as meaning that we should...
Leishman, yeah, somebody has a device or something.
Show me the
It's online.
Once again, thank you, Provost. I'll just start again. Yes, last week our new Chancellor said, "For too long we've indulged in a fight about redistribution," by which I interpreted this as meaning that we should pay less attention to the gap between rich and poor. His is certainly an interesting take, as people in all our wards face a winter where they can't afford to heat their home, feed themselves or buy their kids essentials, never mind the luxury of an occasional treat. Many people will think that after the last 12 years of savage austerity and this new Chancellor's mini budget last week, that the only thing we should be hearing from the Conservative Party about poverty should be a confession and an act of contrition. There's no denying that the report on tackling poverty and the cost of living is a difficult and disturbing read. It's more than uncomfortable to hear that families in our wards are struggling to make ends meet and have, to quote, an impossible hill to climb. The misery and destitution people in our communities are living in is disgraceful, when we bear in mind that we are one of the richest countries in the world and there should be no reason for poverty to exist and be tolerated. As in any society, the ownership and control of the means of production, distribution and exchange pretty much determine most of the inequalities in wealth, income, health and power, and the current system and how it behaves has created a new category, that of the in-work poor. The report we have read states that while employment rates have been high in Perth and Kinross, wages have been low, resulting in many children and households experiencing the damaging effects of poverty. We have a low-paid economy and a widening pay gap compared to the rest of Scotland. The urgent action already taken by Perth and Kinross Council and partners to mitigate the impact of poverty has been a good start. However, for many of our people, things are going to get worse as winter approaches. Perth and Kinross Labour wholeheartedly support the creation of an anti-poverty task force. We need to move from crisis to cooperation and a collaborative approach that draws on the experiences and abilities of a variety of people and organisations from our communities. That gives us a better chance to make lives of people in Perth and Kinross better. We back the cost of living strategy and its key commitments. It's imperative that we provide additional funding for households, give expert advice, work in harmony with community organisations to provide food and warm spaces, and be the caring, compassionate council our residents desperately need. With inflation predicted to carry on rising, interest rates increasing, grocery shopping prices steadily climbing, and the continued suppression of wages, lone parents, single income households, workers in low paid employment, disabled residents and the elderly are all extremely vulnerable as they spend more of their money on everyday essentials. The £470,000 of support to communities and community organisations from the COVID Reserve Fund will help ease the burden of hardship many of our residents will have to contend with, and I'm speaking to second. And to finish on, this is a time of despair, but we need to give our people hope. We as councillors are the most accessible representatives our residents have. We live in the same communities and we need to show our people that we know things aren't working for them, that things aren't right, and we need to show them that we are in solidarity with them, that we genuinely care and that their troubles are ours too. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Leishman. Councillor McCall with the first comment, please.
Thank you, Provost. Wasn't quite ready for that. First of all, I share others' concern at the fact that we have to do this so urgently, and it is a great concern. However, I also want to commend officers and everybody who participated in the briefings, in that the feedback from councillors has been incorporated in there. And I want to refer specifically to in Appendix 3, we talk about help where it is needed most. And it's more comprehensive, I think, than was originally there. But I want to make one particular comment about on Bullet 3 about those living with disabilities or long-term medical conditions. There are many people who are living with hidden disabilities, and in fact their medical conditions are a way of life. And in relation a little bit to the comments earlier on about food poverty, there are many people who have specific dietary needs that are indeed a medical condition, and the cost of their supplies, their food, has doubled and indeed tripled in many cases. And this is not a lifestyle choice, this is a medical necessity. And so therefore I think when we're looking at that category, we should make sure that we have some cross-reference back to the local outcome improvement plans, and when we're looking at alleviating food poverty, to recognise that there is also long-term medical conditions that in themselves are exacerbating the food poverty situation, but also to take it into account in this particular strategy as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCall. Councillor Reddick next, please.
Thank you, Provost. I think I make a comment just in the context of Council needing to be empathetic and sympathetic to this problem. And in that context, I think it's important we note that being an elected member and having lived an experience of poverty are not mutually exclusive. There are members in this chamber just now who have either had experience of poverty in the past or indeed currently still do. And I think it's important that any member of the public who does happen to watch this now or a recording later understands that that's the reason that we can be empathetic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Reddick. Councillor McEwen.
Thank you, Provost. I'd first like to thank the Labour group. I think the very obvious enthusiasm for tackling child poverty and the cost of living is evident to us all today. And similarly, I think from the Liberal Democrat group, on many occasions in this council chamber and even in my own committee, they have commented very positively on this. Do I see the same commitment from Westminster Tories? No, I don't. So I'd like today to call on the Conservative group in Perth and Kinross to write to the Chancellor in Westminster to get him to actually do something that will actually tackle this problem for real. Councillor Hearn wonders why this continues. This continues because of the austerity policies of the Westminster Conservative group. And I hope that they will take me up on this offer. The creation of a Perth and Kinross Anti-Poverty Task Force may be one of the most important decisions this council makes to support the residents of Perth and Kinross, especially our most vulnerable, elderly and young families. Within this report, there's the lived experience of child poverty in Perth and Kinross, and this draws on research conducted by the Poverty Alliance and the Scottish Poverty and Inequality Research Unit. This report must be a cornerstone of how this council tackles poverty and its service provision and how it engages with business, third sector and our residents. Its recommendations include developing a collective effort, a person-centred approach to service provision, professionals providing critical support to families experiencing poverty, including the third sector, and a need to listen to people experiencing poverty locally. Improve communications with residents and action on food to meet the basic needs and the fundamental right of people to have food in their bellies. Child Poverty Scotland Act 2017 requires this council to publish a local child poverty action report. We are on our 4th edition of that report. It is a 4-year plan taking a more strategic and ambitious approach, which this task force is part of. It aligns with the Scottish Government's Best Start, Bright Futures and Child Poverty Delivery Plan and utilises an annual children's scorecard which will report our progress on tackling poverty and allow us to reflect and change practice based on lessons learned. Our cost of living crisis strategy has a 7-point plan that will be important over the winter months as energy costs and the cost of living crisis puts enormous pressure on household budgets. The urgent action it describes will bring funding to where it is needed to provide the basics of food and advice on heating and social support. The Perth and Kinross Anti-Poverty Task Force is only the start of a process that will support the change needed to ensure people across Perth and Kinross are supported and the community resilience is developed to mitigate the impact of poverty. Only through working together can we hope to ever tackle this disgraceful situation, and the Anti-Poverty Task Force will play a huge part in pulling local expertise, business and the people of Perth and Kinross together in common purpose.
Thank you, Councillor McEwen. Councillor Duff next, please.
Thank you, Provost. It is apparent that the challenges of the cost of living increases require us all to work together at local, regional and national levels to address the serious consequences facing us. While I understand the need to use some of our resources now to try and alleviate some of the immediate pain, we must also keep one eye to the future. This council has a duty to help, but we too are also facing a cost of living crisis. We will hear later about the growing structural deficit we are facing and must recognise the stark fact that every penny spent from reserves will have a future impact for our services and for our workforce. I welcome Councillor Laing's remarks about the role of national governments. Continuous underfunding of local authorities by the Scottish Government has been a recognised factor in the current position of many local authorities, and this has been highlighted by Audit Scotland. We know that at present the advertised budget settlement from the Scottish Government for the next 4 years will be a significant cut both in cash terms and in real terms. In relation to Councillor McEwen's comments, I am having a meeting with Douglas Ross fairly soon, and I'll certainly be discussing with him how the UK Government can help local authorities' financial positions. But I would also ask Councillor McEwen to petition the Scottish Government to pass on all the monies that are given to the Scottish Government by the UK Government to local authorities, and not to sit on top of these funds, but to pass them on. In order to address these issues at a local level, we need a fairer settlement from the Scottish Government, and I would ask Councillor Laing to use all his efforts as leader and at COSLA to highlight the plight of local authorities, including Perth and Kinross, and to seek a fairer settlement to address this situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Councillor Liz Barrett.
Thank you, Provost. I warmly welcome the recommendations in this paper, and especially the setting up of the Anti-Poverty Task Force to involve our wider community and their lived experience. We know that people are already struggling to eat or heat, and that means being able to afford to heat food as well as their homes. We know that thousands of our children, single parent families, the disabled and single pensioners are the hardest hit. We know that last week's announcements from the new Chancellor of the Exchequer give very little help to the poorest compared to the richest, and will pile more pressures on those who are already struggling with benefits and living with disability and ill health, and that will increase mental health issues. As many of you know, and has been mentioned, I run South Perth Community Food Share, which is supported by Lethem for All, and we have a fantastic team of volunteers there. Over the last 2 years, we've saved many tonnes of food from landfill that's been donated from supermarkets when it reaches its date, but the amounts of food coming to us to save from landfill now seem to be falling. We also provide low-cost staples of tins and packets subsidised by cash donations from customers and other people, and we share information about support that's available to everyone. The average number of people coming to each session has risen by over 50% this year already, with new people coming and signing up every time. It's very, very clear on the ground that needs rising, and I really do fear the coming of this winter. Many thanks to Claire and to the team for bringing this to us, and I look forward to us all working together to do all we can to tackle this urgent crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Braun.
Thank you, Provost. The falling value of the pound against the dollar will inevitably add to inflationary pressures already being felt. And there is a likelihood that the Bank of England will look to raise interest rates to support the pound, which in turn will put further pressure on many household budgets. And it is quite right that we should want to reach out to help those households which are most vulnerable, and with higher costs already here, there is a genuine desire to help now. But please remember, and I mean this, the real cost of poverty is not monetary. It is the loss of hope, and you can't buy back hope. We could be heading for a perfect storm, or perhaps we are already in it. However, I stress we are heading for that storm, not just the people outside this chamber, nor ourselves as individuals, but we as a council. We have a duty to support all our residents across Perth and Kinross by delivering the services that they expect as a local authority to provide. We are aware that the upcoming budget is going to be difficult, and it is fast approaching. And this financial crisis is not yet settled. It remains in flux. Uncertainty is the only certainty. Prudent financial management is now crucial. Given this, is the drawing of a further 470,000 from reserves, bringing the total withdrawn by this administration in the last 4 months to over 1 million, lacking in necessary caution that should be shown in the current position? With so much instability in this crisis, we do not even know for sure if £470,000 is sufficient. Provost, in summary, I'm not questioning the reasoning behind this plan. On the contrary, we all want to reach out and offer help. None of us would turn our back on anybody who needs help. However, I question somewhat the wisdom of committing further reserves without a more certain foundation on which to base a decision. But given the situation we are in, I would therefore ask the Leader of the Council if he would approach with vigour the government in Holyrood to ask them to reimburse any funds that we need to fund an anti-poverty task force as soon as possible, bearing in mind the financial situation that we are currently in. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you, Councillor Peter Barnett.
Thanks very much, Provost. Back in 2016, Ian Miller, who was the then SNP councillor leader, and I took a motion to council to establish the Perth and Kinross Fairness Commission, and the then Equalities Champion Labour councillor Archie McClellan subsequently chaired that commission and led to the publication of the Fairer Futures report in 2017, which was at that time a groundbreaking report informed by a lived experience of people in Perth and Kinross experiencing poverty, which identified, I think, the intersectional causes of poverty in both our rural and urban areas. So we have an enduring commitment to tackling poverty in this council that spans 3 council terms and 4 council administrations, and that commitment has been characterised by political consensus and collaboration. And I would be absolutely disgusted if today the discussion that we have turns into a blame game and some tokenistic debate about who we can get more money from in order to tackle a crisis that is not just imminent but is affecting people on the ground right here and right now. So we have the money available to us as a council. We have the ability to deploy that and make a difference now, and we don't need to be getting involved in an argument about whether we should be getting more money from Westminster or more money from Holyrood, which isn't actually going to generate any progress at all. So I was going to say that I thought it was good to see that this council is putting the full weight of members' collective leadership and officer and organisational effort behind actions to look after our most vulnerable members of community. But I think that we do need to have a sense check to ensure that that is what we're doing. I'm particularly pleased to see the steps that have already been taken to engage with the third sector and the business sector to bring those groups into the anti-poverty task force. I'm also particularly pleased that it is a task force and not another commission, because this needs to be action orientated, and that was a point that I made to the leader of the council when I saw an initial draft of these proposals, and these proposals were similar, but I think vastly superior to proposals for a task group that I got from Midlothian Council following a COSLA leaders meeting that Councillor Ling and I attended. I think it's fair to say that there are recurring themes across many of today's agenda items about tackling poverty, supporting people through the cost of living crisis, enabling community solutions in everything that we do, including ensuring that people are warm and that they don't die of hypothermia or suffer cardiovascular illnesses, thromboses and heart attacks because of thickening blood due to living in cold, unheated homes. We have a role in facilitating the extension of the reach of community food initiatives and networks, as described by Councillor Liz Barrett. It's also good to see that locally there continues to be so much, or I thought there continued to be so much political agreement and consensus on this approach. To be political for very briefly, I had hoped that our efforts today would have been assisted by the UK government. I had hoped that levelling up was more than just a slogan, but I think that last week's mini budget has erased any such hope. I think the comments made by Councillor Sheila McCall are very apposite. You cannot separate poverty from other inequalities. In Perth and Kinross, you're more likely to experience poverty if you're a disabled person, an older woman, a lone parent, usually a woman, a black or minority ethnic woman with children or an unpaid carer, again, usually women, plus families with 3 or more children, including those with working parents on low incomes. These intersections of disability, gender and race and mental health as well, Councillor Ahern, compound poverty for particularly marginalised groups and families, and the new task force must prioritise equalities in its approach to tackling poverty.
Thank you, Councillor Drysdale.
Thank you, Provost. Councillor Ling, when he led this, the comments on this report, expressed his anger in an emotional manner about why we find ourselves in this position. I take on board that we have so far today achieved a general consensus across the chamber. We have all unanimously approved a corporate plan that places tackling poverty front and centre of our strategy for the next 5 years. I therefore find it incredulous that a relatively modest, at this stage, initial investment in what we need to do to tackle poverty as we approach winter is being questioned by the Conservative leader and Councillor Braun. I just can't believe it. There is. I take on board what Councillor Barrett says. I'm
Councillor
not going to.
Drysdale, can you please hold on a second? Councillor Duff has a point of order. Councillor Duff, what is your point of order?
I just wish Councillor Drysdale would be accurate. I don't think anybody at this side of the chamber has questioned it. There's no amendment against allocating the £470,000 to the purposes. We're just discussing the future. Thank you.
That's a point of clarification rather than a point of order, but Councillor Drysdale may continue. Councillor Ling, you'll get to summate in a second anyway, so you will get to come in at that point. Councillor Drysdale.
I'm happy to review afterwards the comments made by both councillors, but I don't withdraw my comments at this point, and I'll continue with what I was going to say. And this is not a cheap political point in any way. The facts of the matter, as stated as recently as last night by no less an authority than the International Monetary Fund, was that the measures taken last Friday at Westminster will be most likely to increase inequalities across our United Kingdom. That is unforgivable, and that is why I would join with requests to Councillor Duff not to bother with the leader of the Scottish Conservatives. Let's go straight to the Prime Minister that has recently been elected and invite her to reconsider urgently what has happened and to correct the grave error that has already been made that is going to exacerbate this crisis. And let us all focus across this chamber on using the limited resources that Perth and Kinross Council has to do the very best we can for the people of Perth and Kinross.
I'm about to invite the Leader of the Council to summate. However, I just want to remind members that there is a difference between point of order and point of clarification, and the standing orders require me to stop discussion when there's a point of order, but a point of clarification I can wait and come back to. And I understand that we're still all getting used to the difference amongst these things, and I don't think it's intentional in any case. I'm just wanting to get that clarification out there because it does obviously interrupt the flow of people if I have to stop them. So just for future reference, I'm going to comment very briefly myself on what I think actually I've heard today, which is a broad cross-party consensus around a desire to help our residents. And whilst outside of this chamber, there are other bodies who perhaps have more abilities to do things, and we will hope to see things from them. I think it is very positive that across the chamber today, everyone is in support of this paper, and that is something to be welcomed, and that when we go out on our ward level to help ensure our constituents are receiving all the help they can, that will also be done, I'm sure, on a cross-party basis. I'm now going to invite the Leader of the Council to sum up. Mr. Leader.
Thank you very much, Provost. I think what pleased me most about it is that in the central theme of what the paper's about tackling poverty, we can all totally be behind. I find it slightly incredulous that we're questioning the affordability of 470,000 sitting in reserves. I always thought reserves would be something that you would use when you really needed to. And if this isn't a time to start using that funding, I don't know when is. I just find that was a question that was questioned about the fact of funding just now, which was disappointing. I don't think I want to go in anymore. I will not. If I end up having to write letters constantly, I'll not be able to do more work as a Leader of the Council, because at every committee or something I'm asked to write the Scottish Government or the UK Government for more money, which from anywhere would certainly be welcome. But I think we've got to concentrate on working with what we've got, and we'll make more of a difference instead of making political points constantly that nobody out there is really interested in. They're more interested in what we're doing with the funding we've got. So that's all I'll say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Members, can we agree the report? Thank you. Members, we're now going to break for lunch and resume at 2:15.